Today, in the third part of our series looking at climate change and the challenges facing Australia's north, scientists studying climate change impacts in the top end have assessed the response from the federal and Northern Territory governments as irresponsible. Both governments have rejected the accusation, saying they're encouraging projects which reduce greenhouse emissions. And they are both defending their push to drive a massive new shale gas industry without any plan to offset the emissions from it. Jane Bardon reports.
In remote Arnhem Land, the Mimal Rangers are on the front line of fighting bushfires, which are becoming more frequent due to climate warming and drought.
It destroys half of the area's habitat for the animals.
The Rangers carry out these controlled burns in the early dry season to help prevent the spread of wildfires in the late dry and the release of millions of tonnes of carbon into the atmosphere.
Our government recognises that and measures that, and everyone values that, and they pay for that service.
27 top-end ranger groups earn $16 million, preventing more than 1 million tonnes of emissions each year, and selling that as carbon credits to the federal government and big companies. But the Rangers are accusing the federal government of keeping the price of carbon credits low by not requiring polluters to offset more emissions.
There doesn't seem to be any clear policy mechanisms being put in place to drive it up.
They've received a price under the Emissions Reduction Fund, which has clearly encouraged them to get on with these projects.
The Commonwealth requires big greenhouse polluters to limit or offset some of their emissions increases. But scientists studying the effect of climate change in the top end believe both the federal and territory governments aren't doing enough to reduce emissions. They're also accusing both governments of preparing to dramatically increase emissions with a new onshore gas industry.
Well, it's frankly an appalling policy. Emissions from those fossil fuel reserves will continue to contribute to the global problem.
Our obligation to meet our international commitments is extremely important. We've got to do it, but what we shouldn't do is trash the economy, is undermine important industries in the process of doing that.
187, which is immediately adjacent.
The gas industry is arguing replacing the burning of coal with gas could reduce global emissions.
Natural gas-fired power generates approximately half of the carbon emissions of coal-fired power.
The CSIRO backs the gas industry's view. That's even though some of its own research has found no evidence that coal is being replaced by gas in Australia's customer countries. And it's found any environmental benefits could be reversed if gas fields are developed instead of renewable energy projects.
As battery technology and other storage technologies mature, we will see that transition. But over the next 5 to 10 years, that's when natural gas has that role to play.
The Territory government promised all of the gas fracking industry's emissions would be offset. But the industry is pushing instead to be brought under the less stringent federal scheme.
We have a number of years until we see the production of onshore oil and gas, so we have some time on our hands to work through these issues.
The Territory government is arguing it's reducing emissions by encouraging renewable projects, but the push to solar has been driven by private companies.
We're doing it because it makes good environmental sense and makes good business sense.
Darwin Airport generates a third of its own electricity from its solar farm, but its plan to build a large battery here and supply power into Darwin homes have been delayed by negotiations with the NT government-owned power company about the conditions for getting access to feed into the grid.
You won't be surprised if I say I wish that they could do it faster, because we're ready to go.
With governments adamant they're doing enough, those fighting climate change effects are expecting no respite.
All these things sort of point to tougher fire seasons, so the potential for those hotter late season wildfires is much higher. There's no simple solution, unfortunately.